finally got off our butt and went to visit the gentleman that had stored our Project MG for a number of years and had all the bits. And he had discovered that he still had a few bits laying there, so we finally went to get them. And that was like a treasure trip. We managed to get the air cleaner, which is a big deal, and we also managed to get, let's see if I can do this, a couple of parts that we really needed, and they're in this cup of vinegar right now. But basically we got the other side little chrome plate that attaches the headlight mount to the radiator crossbar and the bolt and nut for that. And we also got, and this is critical to what we're doing right now, the door hinge pins and springs. So we've got them soaking in some vinegar to help get rid of the rust, and we'll get them out of there and wash them off and clean them up, and we can put those proper door hinge pins and springs in along with the little balls and work on lining up our doors. You know, the left-hand side door we had mounted already. I think it needs a little bit of adjustment, but no point in doing that until we get the proper pins in. And the right-hand driver's side door, we have yet to mount the hinges, so we can work on doing that as well. We have a little bit better picture of the bits we got. Doesn't look like much, but I can tell you, if you don't have these bits, you're not going to go down to the local hardware and get them. So getting this stuff and getting it all complete. This door hinge pin looks nearly new. These ones have a little bit of wear on them, but you know, they're all specialized items. I suppose you could hunt around and find some little springs like that. Of course, you can buy the stuff from the parts suppliers, but everything costs money, so just getting this stuff was a big plus. We got a few other bits and pieces in a bag here, just miscellaneous little screws and some washers. The washers actually look like they might be the washers that held the fenders up in place, so we'll get them out and clean them up. But that's a big find for us. We put our new to us, hinge pin bolts in, springs on this passenger side door. And now, of course, we're into the next area of problems, and that's getting the door tweaked just right so it closes properly. It's not too bad. We've got a lot of you know, old wood here that's not very tidy. I've snugged up these hinge bolts here quite a bit, pulled things together, and really the problem we're having now is the door is a little low in the front out here and drags on the sill. So what we need to do is kind of pull this bottom edge up and in, and right now I have the screws out of here, and originally I was going to drill a couple of new holes and pull the door around, put a couple of new screws in. But what I think I'm going to do now, I've seen some people do various things on the internet, and I think the thing that I saw was the trickiest deal is to cut this bar here in half, take a section out of it, and just put a small turnbuckle in here. So I'll put those screws back in where they were, and then put a little turnbuckle in there. And I don't think you have to do much. Right now, if I try to tweak that door around, this bar is too long. So if I take a section out of it and put turnbuckle in, I can shorten that up, pull this lower corner in, and that might help. But the other thing that I think I'm going to look at, and I've got to put some thought into it, is to put a shim between this lower hinge and the door, and that will, in theory, tilt the door ever so slightly up, and hopefully that'll give me the clearance I need. I've got plenty of room at the front edge, so that's not going to be a problem. So I think what I'm going to do is make up some shims, and I'll probably make some to go behind both hinges, and depending on how this all looks, I may put one shim at the top and then one twice as thick at the bottom to actually move the door forward a little bit and up at the same time. So that's going to take some thought. I've got another set of hinges that haven't been mounted, so I can use them as a pattern to make some shims, and we'll just see what we end up with there. I'd rather put the shim between the door and the hinge than putting the shim between the hinge and the post, because over here you really, especially at the bottom, you just have these two wood screws holding things together, and I'm not real keen on that. So at least here you have bolts going all the way through, and they're plenty long enough to be able to put. I won't think it'll take a 60 thou shim, maybe an eighth. I think an eighth might be too much, because a little bit of shim here makes a big difference out the other end. But that's really where we are. We go ahead and swing the door shut, and you can kind of see here, you know, the door really wants to come up right here, and I think putting that shim at the back will accomplish that. If I just push up on the door ever so slightly, we're looking pretty good there. So that door's just got to come up, and I think between the turnbuckle and the shim under the hinge at the back, and I think we'll be in good shape there. The reason I wanted to consider shimming both hinges was because right now I have a reasonably okay gap right here, and my door's out a little wide there. You know, I'm just going to live with that. The top edge is pretty good, and I'm just afraid if I put too much of a shim at the bottom, it's going to tighten that gap up. So if it does that, then I've got to move the whole door forward, just move it farther forward on the bottom than the top. We don't want to get too much farther forward, because then we'll be exposing our seam there. And right now, I've got a little bit of a widening gap here at the back, you know, around the bottom, stays pretty even. I could tuck this hinge in a little bit, and I mean, it's not much. I'm not sure it's worth the aggravation, but I might do that. That will pull the bottom of the door in a little bit, make it a little tighter against the body. I mean, here I've not got much, maybe 70 thou or so, and down here it widens out quite a bit. Right about in the middle there it widens out, and then it stays wide underneath, sort of all the way to the front. And so we may need to pull that hinge in a little tighter. The only solution there, because that hinge is on with wood screws, is to either slot the existing holes, which I don't like, or what I might do is drill 2 new holes, so that in the end of the day you'd end up with 4 holes there in that thing, and move the thing in and put some new screws in I'll have to look. I mean, I could weld up the existing holes and re-drill them. I'm going to have to determine what the best way to do that is. If I decide to pull that in a little tighter, it probably should be done. What we decided to do was weld the hinges, the holes in the hinges up, the hinge that bolts to the door pillar. We went and welded those up and drilled a couple of new holes, about a half a hole tighter. And what we're going to do is move that door in a little bit, and we had to do the same thing to the bottom so that we end up with a nice line here, and that'll pull our bottom in better. And we've got a pretty good line at the top here now. We just got to make sure we don't get this too tight here, but I think that's going to work out for us. A lot of aggro, but I think that'll make a nice job out of it. And here you can see we've glommed a little weld on the bottom hinge, and we'll grind that down flat. The thing is, we already have some screw holes in our door pillars, so it's not like we can, rather than drill those out and put plugs in there like guys do, I'd rather move the holes in the hinge and move the hinge in a little bit, and that'll bring the door in. So we've got to grind that down, and then we'll drill a hole just inside that one. Need a 1/4 inch hole, then we come on the other side and countersink it. That should tuck that door in nicely. I guess we'll find out. We can't talk. We welded up and re-drilled our door hinges to get a little bit better fit, and I think we're pretty good here now. Pretty tight in there, pretty tight along the bottom, a little fat down under here. Not really too bad. The door's not closed all the way, but pretty tight there. When you get the door closed, the door kind of swings open there, doesn't really go too much in either direction, and fills the opening pretty good. We don't have the striker in there to latch it, but I think it's almost time to put that in. And when that's latched, that door I think is going to fit pretty good. Good enough for who it's for, let's put it that way. We can tweak the door a little bit. I may still put that turnbuckle. I never did put the turnbuckle inside because I wanted to do the hinges first, and I might put that turnbuckle inside. I don't know. It doesn't really need it, and when you put, I'm hopeful that whatever kind of interior panel we put on inside there will have some backing material. I tend to use a hard plastic backer rather than cowlboard, and maybe the hard plastic backer, ABS or whatever it is, will stiffen that door up by adding a perimeter to it, but we'll see. I may put the turnbuckle in there, but right now I really don't think we need it. The latch works. We just have to mount the striker there in the door pillar in the right place, but I'm happy with that. So it just goes to show you, much better to be lucky than smart. We got just happened to get those hinges cleaned up and re-drilled, and this spot here is a skosh low. If I was a perfectionist, I'd want to have that up a little bit or this down a little bit, but I'm not worried about that. I think it's pretty good. So now we've got to do the other side. This side, of course, we already had the door mounted once. The other side we haven't done anything, so maybe, just maybe, we can figure out how to put the other side on without having to weld up and re-drill the hinges.